because she came to actually understand that she was locked into a belief. So can you explain to me how you actually can discern by people's language, and that actually guides you as a consultant of this beautiful gut, heart, mind, and spirit connection?
Absolutely. In fact, I want to ask your permission, Terri. Can I pick up on a phrase that you used a couple of times here?
Please do. Please.
Okay. So when you used the phrase that you were running from hyenas.
Metaphors are very powerful.
Yes. And so for me, and especially when it came twice, it came more than once. And for me, straight away when I hear that, I think past life.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I can give it, so you must.
There you go. And I got the shivers too. Like as soon as I said running from hyenas, I got shivers. And I want to differentiate something here too, because like when I say that the emotional movement is complete, that you get chilled, I don't mean that I don't mean like the truth bumps feeling. That's a different thing. That's a clear sense. That is a clear sense. When you get the truth bumps, that's a clear sense. But anyway, here's what's interesting is that, and I'm going to speak this, and both of our bodies will give us the tell of whether it's true.
Hey, and welcome to the Genius Zone. And oh my gosh, you're not going to want to miss this, because this lady here, she helped change the trajectory of my life as my husband was going through the dying phase. So this is a lady that believes exactly what is the title, and that is that there is a gut, mind, and spirit connection, and everything is connected. So with no further ado, we give you the beautiful consultant of gut, mind, spirit connection, Holly Blazina. Hello, how are you, gorgeous lady?
Oh, I am absolutely wonderful. And thank you so much for having me on your show this afternoon, Terri. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, I'm so thrilled you're here, because this is like a huge integration for me. And I feel that as people get to listen in, because we all suffer some kind of a trauma, some kind of a loss, some kind of a stress in our life. You just cannot get away from it. And I think so many of us just think it's in the head. It's what we've got in the head. I'm going to start off with the embryo and the development of the embryo, and what doctors couldn't differentiate between when they looked and studied it. Would you like to begin by opening it up so we can really preface your gut, mind, and spirit connection?
Absolutely. And just to clarify, I call it the gut, heart, mind, spirit connection, because of course the mind and the heart, in some cultures they're the same in a sense, and in other cultures like ours, a lot of times we feel there's a differentiation between the mind and the emotions. So yeah, it's very important to include the heart in that as well. And yeah, let's talk about that. And I just learned this recently, that at a certain point in our development as embryos, there are two masses, and one of them becomes the brain, one of them becomes the gut, but there's a point where they're not able to distinguish between the two yet in the development of the embryo. And so when they say that the gut is the second brain, it is actually one and the same as the first brain. The two of them are so intimately connected.
That is phenomenal. Now, I have definitely heard gut brain, and we know that we have an intuition. And I wonder if that is what they mean with the gut instinct, because sometimes when you're making a decision about something, you can get lost in your head and you can overthink, and then everything gets really muddied. And then you could go for a run, or you could go for a stroll, or you could go for a walk, or you could just be in the moment. And then that's when you get these light bulb moments, because you've suddenly moved into your physicality. Do you believe that to be true, Holly?
100%. 100%. If you want to get out of the mind, move the body. That's something that will take you into the body, and then you can go from there. And absolutely, when you're talking about those gut instincts, this is something that's really more and more important in our society than it's ever been, is those clair senses. So that gut sense, that is one of the clair senses, that gut instinct. It's called clairgustance.
That's
So
cool.
I believe that we run our entire spirit. We are embodied spirit. And I believe so firmly that at this point in our development as humans, there's so many of us have got a great deal of spiritual development right now. But if we are not embodying that development, that's when there's just more work to do. There's always more work to do.
Well, we're fragmented. That's what I know to be true. And this is where you are an integration queen. And we'll go further and deeper into my story of my husband was in the dying phase when I met you. I'm seeing your aura now. Oh, I've just got these. So yes, Spirit's telling me right now that this was an incredible piece to the puzzle for me, because so many people are shocked at how well I've transitioned through the process. I just can't unsee that aura. I know I'm just saying it as I'm speaking here, but this is the absolute truth. Your aura is just phenomenal. And I've just got goosebumps all over. Maybe Ian is present here. But of course, when he passed away, the fact that I was able to integrate, you are the integration queen. And I know that I was probably very fragmented. And when I look back, even through a lot of my own personal resources, I can't help feeling that I've been fragmented unknowingly for such a long time, but I've had resources to combat, which has been a Band-Aid. And I really feel that what you have done has unwound so much stuff. So I'm going to get into that now so you can teach our audience about it. You're not going to want to go away, because at the end, Holly is going to be actually giving us a beautiful experiential element of some of the work she does. So stay tuned. But let's talk about the unwinding through our beliefs, the ancestral lineage, and embodiment. Would you like to take that away?
Absolutely. And so let's just start with this. Again, we've already established that we're spirit in a body, and that we're meant to be embodied. And yet we're also a culmination of all of our experiences in this lifetime. Studies have shown scientifically that when we, like our DNA, whenever there's something that occurs for us in our genetic line, that is something that gets imprinted on the DNA. And I want to be clear. In fact, it's interesting because somebody was talking about like a DNA imprint. And I was just like, but wait a minute, that's like, in a way, I don't even like that language because it sounds permanent. It is not. It isn't permanent. We can change our DNA. We can also change our genetic expression. And however, when we've got those experiences that come through the genetic line, and let's even come back to that embryo image for a moment too, where, and maybe by now many of us have seen this image where, when your grandmother is carrying your mother, and your mother is developing, her body's developing in your grandmother's womb, her uterus and ovaries are developing inside, and the eggs are developing inside of, we've been carried by both of our grandmothers and our mothers. And so whatever experience they were experiencing at that time, whatever emotions, whatever cocktail of their gut biome, all of that, we are assimilating all of that.
Oh my God.
Grandmother.
So I had heard of the grandmother there being in the embryo, and I didn't understand that a lot. But when you think about it, it's a heavy kind of responsibility, because now we're talking about not one generation of how our own mother was going through that pregnancy, but now it's reflective of our grandmothers as well.
It is. And I've heard people say it's not exactly like that, but it's pretty close. And studies have shown, say in rat, for example, that if a rat is traumatized, then that's something that expresses itself through up to 14 generations, where they can still see a trauma response 14 generations later.
14 generations later. And we're going to get into a little bit about how Holly does help untangle that. So perhaps teach on the untangling or the unwinding, and then we'll go even deeper.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. So for me, I've done a lot of work with yoga. That's one of my genres, if you will, and a lot of work with Ayurveda. And so there's all of that stuff on the physical and the physiological plane. But of course, we know that yoga works on the fascia as well. So if you don't know what fascia is, in fact, we're born into fascia, right? Like when we talked earlier about that, the gut and the brain, that's all within a fascial sac in a sense. And then that fascia, like we develop inside that fascia and through that fascia, around that fascia. And so when we're doing yoga, then we work with the fascial layers. And Terri, you and I were speaking earlier about how I'm using even more modalities to address that fascial layer, because that's how, think about it, that's the part that is in the mother from the very beginning, is that fascia. And like all of the beliefs of the mother are in there too. And for that matter, to some degree, obviously the father as well. So we have all of, and then it goes also in the psychic levels.
Yeah.
So of course, in our culture, we make much of the lineage, like the maternal lineage, which rightfully, but I know for myself, there's been much that's come through my paternal lineage as well, and through my paternal grandmother.
Wow, that's incredible. So you also talk about how the gut, as the original brain, the center is the center of personal power. And this is a big one, because this is something I had noticed had formed for me since our session. So I am going to give you some glory here. I feel that everything is divine intervention. However, I do have to say that since our session, what I had experienced is, oh my gosh, a total turn up of intuition. Although when my husband did pass, it was like there was an impartation. The veil had lifted, so my intuition woke up a lot. However, I started to sense my intuition really expanding after our session. But there's something else that happened as well, which I had a big problem with, and I've noticed it has corrected. And maybe you can bring some, what I call conscious competency around this. And that is that all of a sudden, I began to form some boundaries. Now, boundaries have been a really big challenge for me for most of my life. And I want you to just unpack how all of this work, this beautiful work that you do, does come back to empowering us and helping with intuition and boundaries.
Oh, wonderful. That's a great question. And let's start with this because I'm sure your audience knows about the chakra system. And so that solar plexus that is in, it's just below the xiphoid process in your rib cage, like between the xiphoid process and the belly button. That would be the solar plexus. That is your power center. That is where we form boundaries. And not surprisingly and not coincidentally, that's also where the gut resides. And so this is, it's something that I work with my clients in on so many different levels, boundaries, because I can say, as an example, I had a client who when I asked her like what bad things would happen if you were to heal, right? Because we have to look at those things. And
Yes.
her answer was, if I were to heal, I think my husband would just want me to keep the house a lot cleaner. So if she were to get her
Oh,
energy, so I was just like, oh my goodness, we've got to transform this because so she didn't have the ability to set boundaries with her husband and say, actually, my energy is for me, it's not for you. And how many people I can say myself at one point in my programming, I used illness and getting sick as a way of setting boundaries, as a way of saying, I can't do that.
oh my
Whatever,
gosh, that's phenomenal. You know
whatever.
what? Because, when people are sick or when they are addicted or when they are caught up in sabotaging patterns, and what you've just done has given a very strong explanation to what I'd say in short, which is what is the higher purpose you're doing this? And a lot of people really struggle with the concept that they are actually locked into a sabotaging pattern because their subconscious brain feels safe. And you've just nailed it.
Well, and as in the embodied vision work that I do, we have to take a look at all of the fears that are running that pattern. And then we have to take a look at the gifts that are in that pattern too. And we do that not just from the conscious mind, we call up on the subconscious to reveal whatever it's got going. Because if we just work with the conscious mind, that's only 5% of our whole mind. That's only 5% of the directive for us. And so we can't just left brain our way through these things. We have to incorporate the subconscious and enlist it, make it feel safe enough that it can reveal itself as to like, why am I setting boundaries? Why am I not setting boundaries? And of course, if there's a relationship issue, then one might be afraid of what's going to happen if that husband, for example, would say, what, you're not cleaning my house? There's going to be a confrontation there, right? On some.
You know what? My brain is flicking back to a mother when my kids were in school who spent 90% of her life on the couch in agony with her back. And she was the best delegator I'd ever met in my entire life. And it's funny how she could snap into action when there was something fun and adventurous happening. But when it came to a lot of the day-to-day tasks, her family had to become extremely competent. And I recognized that her back and the pain she was having was serving her. And you don't dare say it unless they are giving permission and you're going through a session to go, what is the purpose? This is happening. And look, speaking of the unwinding and the unraveling and getting to the bottom of it through belief change and looking at those belief concepts, you were talking to me backstage about the human garage and the organ unwinding. Would you like to just enlighten me on this human garage thing? Because I'm really interested and I know it's something new that's come out.
Yeah, it's new to me anyway, and I've been using it to help unwind a pattern that I have going in my body or that I'm working with right now. But what it does is it unwinds the fascia layers And of course, this is one of the things that, and I can't say that it's Human Garage that says this, maybe they do, but the body is a manifestation of the subconscious mind. And so as we unwind those physical patterns, a lot of times the subconscious beliefs will come up and out at the same time. So one of the things that, and people say this in the yoga system, and for sure I've had it happen with clients in Gutsy Yoga as well, but in working with this Human Garage, with the myofascial unwinding work that I've been doing with that, it's not unusual that a pattern will release and that it will result in tears. You'll have a little cry session, and whether that's in a yoga, I've had it happen in a yoga context or in the Human Garage context where, just somewhere out of the blue, all of a sudden you're crying for some reason, you don't understand what it is. And I always tell people too, again, whatever context that shows up in, you don't have to go digging for what that is. If the tears are there, it's because your body is releasing it. You don't have to know, you don't have to understand. The only thing you need to do is stay present with it and give that emotion its room to move and give it your attention. And when it'll complete itself. One of the ways that you can know that it has completed itself is after you may have noticed this after our session too, maybe you felt very chilly. And so
You know what? I cannot remember how I felt, only that there was a massive shift. And when we're doing the timeline, it's interesting with my own grief, how it has all unraveled. And I cannot even thank you enough, because I had been in fight flight mode, totally advocating for my husband for so long. It was so painful. It was also frustrating because we didn't know. Now, I don't even know that at the point that you and I had been going through this session together, all I knew is that I was running from hyenas. Like, my subconscious was literally running from hyenas. So coming into this space with you helped me ground and integrate. And I'm just having chills again as I'm saying this. And you know what? God only knows, Holly, that I so needed that, because if I thought that the worst had come, the worst was yet to come at that point. And yet I was so equipped because of, and I know that I'm getting signs with the chills now, which is telling me that the work you did was so powerful. And I thank God for that. And it was probably around 8 weeks later, he was officially diagnosed with an always fatal disease that I know I would not have coped with. He then went into the dying phase, and I know I wouldn't have coped with that either. And then after he passed away, I had to literally organize a funeral and all of the elements amongst the grief and amongst all of this. And you've got no idea how incredibly powerful it was, because I was able to transition through all of that. And I'm a really bad integrator, and this has always been my weakness. So the fact that you helped me to integrate everything caused me to be more present. So I want to ask you this question. If there is someone out there, I am sharing my own personal story here, and it's a story about high stress where you have to keep going though. It doesn't take you down into a depression phase. And I feel that if I hadn't had that session with you as well, I probably would have gone from fight, flight, running from hyenas into this kind of a dark rabbit hole of depression. And I want you to perhaps help share to the audience, if someone is in that phase of depression, or they're locked into their reality, what would be the first thing that you would do or ask them to help shift the needle? What are some of the beautiful questions you would ask?
It's so interesting that you ask this, because one of the things that I do as a practitioner is I ask questions in that meditative space or in that space of inquiry that says, what actually is going on in this situation? And so one of the questions that I asked very recently actually is, what is the difference between like a nervous system freeze state and depression? And so far, what I've come up with is that as a conclusion, which there may be more that comes in, but what showed up for me recently about this was that the only difference between a depression and a freeze state is that in a freeze state, you allow that experience and you honor that experience, which means that you can move through it. A depression is where you disallow it and then it persists.
Wow.
That may not be all of it in every situation, but that was what came to me. And so one of the things that I always love to look at is, number one, what can be honored in this state? Like, where are you fighting what's happening for you right now? And is there a way that you can honor that, or not even ask, is there a way? Just what would happen if you were to honor this state? And in fact, that would be, again, that line of questioning around the fears and the gifts. If you were to honor this state, what's the worst thing that would happen? Take all the fears, release those. And what are the gifts? What are the good things that have happened from being in this state?
Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible. I feel that you imparted such a gift to me, and I was riding my e-bike the other day and I suddenly met with a lady. It was first thing in the morning, and I don't particularly like to interact fully in the morning because I like to unwind and just have my meditative state. And this lady didn't strike me as a real socialite, but she just started to talk to me, and that conversation led into, I noticed that because I know that this actually is something that you do. You pick up people's language and you can discern their beliefs through their language. I'm going to throw it over to you in a moment, but I'm going to just share that I kept hearing this lady. Now, if she said it once or maybe even twice, I wouldn't have thought much of it. I would have just gone, might have been able to take it in a very holistic, spiritual way. But because she'd said it over and over again, I'm like, oh, what is she truly believing about this? And what she was saying was, tomorrow's not promised. Tomorrow's not promised. And she kept saying it. So she said it about 4 or 5 times. And I understand that tomorrow's not promised. And I also understand that it's great to live as if we are in the present. But what she went on to say is that she was having this head ache on one side of her head. And I got to know that. And then I just started to ask her some questions. What does that feel like? And when did you notice that started? And look, I wasn't going to go into a conversation with her, but suddenly Ian, his presence suddenly was all around me. And I remembered how generous he was, like yourself, Holly, just so giving in his service. And I started to ask her these right questions. Do you know that her life changed because of those questions? Because she came to actually understand that she was locked into a belief. So can you explain to me how you actually can discern by people's language, and that actually guides you as a consultant of this beautiful gut, heart, mind, and spirit connection?
Absolutely. In fact, I want to ask your permission, Terri. Can I pick up on a phrase that you used a couple of times here?
Please do. Please.
Okay. So when you used the phrase that you were running from hyenas.
Metaphors are very powerful.
Yes. And so for me, and especially when it came twice, it came more than once. And For me, straight away when I hear that, I think past life.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I can give us, so you must.
There you go. And I got the shivers too. Like as soon as I said running from hyenas, I got shivers. And this is, I want to differentiate something here too, because like when I say that the emotional movement is complete, that you get chilled, I don't mean that sort of, I don't mean like the truth bumps feeling. That's a different thing. That's a clear sense. That is a clear sense. When you get the truth bumps, that's a clear sense. But so anyway, that's what, here's what's interesting is that, and I'm going to speak this and both of our bodies will give us the tell of whether it's true that belief has actually already moved, even though we didn't work on it specifically. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a really good way of describing the body physicality sense of what I was feeling throughout the majority of that time. And admittedly, I came to this space of being very grounded and very present. And I feel that I did have that gift of being very present with him because I spent so much time, but this was a different presence. And you just clicked me back to another metaphor or something that had happened. And what we'd worked out in the session is that somehow or rather, as you were going deeper into my belief system, there was this element of being buried under sand, if you can remember. And first of all, it was like, is it buried? Like, I know, sorry, trigger warning here, alive. But then it turned out that I had gone back into one of my ancestors and I didn't know where it was going. And I was at war. And in actual fact, I was buried under the sand. And then there was that sense of isolation. And as you were taking me through the whole process, you were going down through the layers, down deeper and deeper. And I guess this is where all of that old belief system is located, and the ancestral biology of memory. And of course, that's when, and you weren't going to stop at anything. I thought, oh, we found it. And you were like, no, we just had to keep going. And you would not that. Yeah, you did not. And then I thought, my gosh, that was so massive. But I didn't think we needed to go any deeper. But the fact that you untangled that and you located that, and it's not, you didn't tell me anything, you were facilitating it. And this is the kind of work that you do. So I will just do a quick information that if you are looking to actually see this beautiful lady, please go to our show notes. You can contact Holly and really go deep. I can tell you right here and now, my experience was absolutely phenomenal and it was life-changing, and I am so grateful. However, let's get back to it because we are going to go into one of your modalities very soon. So what is the decision maker, do you think? Is it that the gut is the protector, boundary setter, decision maker, or is it the mind?
It depends on where you're working from. If you give the mind, here's the thing, is that the mind, like the conscious mind, is really, like we said earlier, it's only 5% of the entire mind. But if you're trying to run 100% of your life through that 5%, it's very stressful. And then that stress is going to manifest in your body. It's going to manifest in your gut. And I think every one of us has had the experience of doing that. We wouldn't be human if we hadn't, right? But as you learn to trust the rest of your being, as you learn to trust your gut, as you learn to trust those other clair senses, then, then they can start to have a greater voice as well.
Wow. And I remember learning that too, that the subconscious mind is like the whole room, for example. And then the conscious mind is only that much. So no wonder people get so overwhelmed by overthinking and getting stuck into that situation. My goodness. Now, can you take us through the chakras? Because I heard you say at the beginning, a lot of the people will understand, but I don't really think that everyone, especially when we go to radio, they will be radio listeners that go, oh, chakras? What's this lady talking about? So could you take us through the chakras?
Sure. I'll talk about the 7 main chakras. There are other ones too, but I'll start with the root chakra. So the root chakra, and there are a number of different systems that say several different things. So I'll explain quickly. The root chakra is all about tribal consciousness. And from an Ayurvedic perspective, so Ayurveda is the the ancient East Indian naturopathic system that goes alongside yoga. It prepares the body for the enlightenment that the yoga system promises. So we have to upgrade our system in order to run that through, in order to run that enlightenment through our physical body. Otherwise, we basically blow our circuits. So with the Ayurvedic system, it's based on the principles of the 5 sacred elements of earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And so the root chakra corresponds to the earth element. And when we're feeling that we're grounded, that you've used so many times so beautifully, that is when you're connected with that sense of earth, and where there's that give and take with the earth, and that we actually will, as a humanity, the more of us, as more and more of us become truly connected with that earth element, we will stop ruining the earth. Right? When we're really and truly grounded in the root. And then, yeah, isn't that something? And then the sacral chakra, it's the creative center. It's the relationship chakra. It's like a partnership chakra. It's related to money. It's related to abundance. It's also related to, and sometimes in certain contexts, we even refer to it as the water chakra. And again, when we get into that sense of flow with that second chakra, we will no longer be willing to pollute the waters. We will know that we will no longer, because our whole body is, depending on who you talk to, anywhere between 60 to 80% water.
Yes.
And we are constantly taking water into our system, either by drinking it or through our skin, constantly sweating it out and peeing it out. And so we're actually one with our whole, just the same way as the oceans are constantly evaporating and being rained into again. The rivers and streams are constantly being evaporated and rained into again. And so we're actually a part of that water system that is, again, on our planet. The solar plexus is the fire chakra. And in the Ayurvedic system, so outside of the Ayurvedic system, I mentioned that it's your power source. But in Ayurveda, we understand there's actually a special word to describe the digestive fire, which is called Agni. And there are several kinds of them. It relates to breaking down and processing food. And we think about how that happens. It happens through we basically are sorting out parsing out, these are the nutrients, these are the fats, these are the waste, and they all go to wherever they're supposed to go. But we also do that. There's another type of Agni that does that with our life experience, where we, again, get rid of the fears, release those, they're waste, and then accept the gifts. Those are the nutrients.
And speaking of which, you talk about digesting life. Yeah. And I think that's a huge piece of integration as well. Well, it was for me. So digesting life, not just food, and restoring authority without force. Is that part of what you're talking about as well?
100%, because you know what it's like when you have a broken heart and you cannot eat anything.
Oh, yeah.
You know what that feels like. Every one of us does. Every one of us has had that experience. If you haven't had that experience, wait for the rest of life.
That was the only thing. That was the one thing that I noticed. It's like everything else was working, functioning. After Ian passed, I couldn't eat. And that's restored. And it did restore very quickly. But yeah, it's like you see that happen to animals as well. Animals, when they get really upset, an animal, a dog especially, I've seen they just go off their food and something is terribly wrong, especially if they've got like a healthy appetite.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then if we continue on through the heart is the air chakra. It's the one that when it's fully online, and I love Caroline Mace's mantra that goes with it, which is that love is divine power. And when that heart chakra is fully online, it will continue to expand and continue to make space for whatever comes. There's always room. In fact, a question that one can ask, is there room for this too? And the answer is always yes.
Yeah.
Right? The answer to that is always yes. And yes, and so important, this notion of heart coherence. I haven't had this experience, but I've heard that in India, many people, like in Western culture, if we talk about the mind, we refer to the mind as in the brain. In India, apparently, if you refer to the mind, they put their hand on their heart.
Wow. Yes, they got thing that, because they're tuning in.
Because they're tuning into that deep mind, that heart-centered mind, and that heart coherence. And then that brings us to the throat chakra, which is it's the voice. And it's also where we surrender to the divine. And you know this as a podcaster, because you know that I don't control what is like the content that's coming forth on this podcast. This is very much a turning this over to divine will and say, okay, what needs to be said here? And that is something, that's the ether. It's an ether chakra, right? When it's functioning properly, we pick up on like the radio waves, as it were, in the ether, and then they come out our mouth. We bring them into manifestation and into speech. And then, isn't it? And then the third eye, this is the space between the eyebrows. This is also an ether chakra. And actually, this is something that very much with the ancient Egyptians knew, that with the third eye, like the eye of Horus. How did they know that if you dissect, or that if you take a cross section of the pineal gland, that it looks like the eye of Horus? And so that's the third eye. And the third eye, when it's very confused, and I've seen this with myself as well, that at times that third eye, it's like brambles. And then when it clears out, and then I can have the actual proper thoughts that are truthful and not diluted, then that's when that third eye is functioning properly. A really important thing to know about the third eye as well is that there's a construct that happens where we connect with the people around us. So we've all heard this statement that you become the top 5 people you spend the most time with. That's a function of the third eye, that we naturally start to take on the ideas of who and what is around us. And one of the things that I think is very important in terms of our own sovereignty is that we also start to recognize that the top 5 people we spend the most time with, they're also going to become us. And so what example do I want to set? And I'm going to make the decision about what is going to be the dominant and most pervasive concept in the field, right? So we can, as we become stronger, and do that not from a position of our own personal will, but that we do that from a position of truth, of highest truth. And then lastly is the crown chakra, at least in the 7 chakras. There's actually more than 7, but in the crown chakra, I think of it as being like a funnel, right? And the funnel it's coming from divine consciousness. It's also the Caroline Mace's mantra for that, which I absolutely love, is be here now in this moment, or be here in this moment. Like
Yes.
it's very much about presence.
Yes.
And again, it's very ethereal.
Yes.
So
Holly, I just want to say I've lost my camera. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine, Terri. Yes.
So what I'm going to do is we are going to close the show with
Okay.
your beautiful modality, but I just want to thank you so much. You have just been a light in my life. And for whatever reason, we have blown up technology today. I can assure you it is that this is very powerful. So I just want to, in closing, just hand over to you for that modality that we've promised. And I want to thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Oh, Terri, it is absolutely my pleasure to be here. And everything that you said about me, back at you, sister. I just love being in your presence. So the modality that I want to, or the tool that I want to share with you today is one that came through my yoga lineage. And that lineage is by means of Swami Radha. So many of my yoga mentors studied with her. And she's got this beautiful divine light invocation. It can be done as like a physical practice or as a mantra. Today, I'm going to share it as a mantra. And so I want to invite you to just go inside, close your eyes, and repeat after me. I am created by divine light. I am sustained by divine light. I am protected by divine light. I am surrounded by divine light. I am ever growing into divine light. And since there's more than one of us here, we'll do the we version of that as well. So repeat after me. We are created by divine light. We are sustained by divine light. We are protected by divine light. We are surrounded by divine light. We are ever growing into divine light. And then the next part of it is every cell of this, my physical body, is filled with divine light. Every level of consciousness is illumined by divine light. Divine light permeates every cell of my body, every level of consciousness. I've become a channel of pure light. I am one with the light. And so how can you use this? One of the ways you can use it, one of the ways I use it when I'm about to teach a gutsy yoga class, or if I'm about to do an embodied vision session with someone, or I'm about to teach a group program, I do that invocation every single time as I open the space. And then I always clear and close the space once the session is complete. I actually did the divine light invocation before Terri and I hopped onto this beautiful program. The other thing is I do it last thing before I sleep. I do it first thing every morning when I wake up. It is so clear and present to my consciousness. Anytime there is a person you're concerned about, you can do the divine light invocation and put that person into the light. Imagine that they're also in that bubble of light with you. And one quick caution is never ever put someone else in the light without putting yourself also in the light. So that's what I'd love to share. Thank you so much for listening until the end and for hosting this, Terri. It's just what a
Thank
wonderful.
you so much, Holly. And remember, guys, all Holly's details are in the show notes. That's it for our show today, our incredible show, The Genius Zone. Thank you for joining. And until next time, may the force be with you. Oh, thank
Our show where we have explored through this various topic, along with all the exciting new topics that we bring every week to enhance your personal mastery of excellence. Now, I'd love you to do me a favor. In fact, be part of the Legacy 1 million that I have in the vision for 2028. If you know someone who really would benefit from this recording, from this episode, please share it with them. And when you subscribe, you get notified every week of our episode as soon as it drops. So let's do that legacy thing. Let's share, let's care, let's enrich. And I look forward to bringing you another week of the most enriching content. So until next time, stay inspired, stay awesome, and keep on mastering your excellence.